I did get a Tesla loaner, which is amazing. I was, that was my at least baseline hope, was that I was at least going to get a Tesla. I really wasn't sure what that car would be if I did get one. Turned out that was an S60. It has about 25,000 miles on it, has California plates on it, which is kind of fun considering we're in the middle of Illinois. But I wanted to do a quick video to share with you some of my initial thoughts about the comparison between the Model 3 and the Model S. And I know this video has probably been made 1,000 times, but for people that watch my channel, I've done a lot of videos in my Model 3, but none in a Model S. In just initial feedback about the Model S, my gosh, it is substantially larger. The inside feels just immense compared to my Model 3. And I never felt like my Model 3 felt small by any means. I really like the size of it. If anything, I'm leaning more towards the fact that I feel like the Model S is just too big of a car for me personally, for my daily driving use. I don't need a car this big. It feels like a boat. And some people love that, and some people tolerate it, and some people hate it. I'm in the tolerate section. It's a beautiful car, drives great. The Model S 60, comparative to my Model 3 dual motor, there's absolutely no comparison in terms of speed. My Model 3 would blow this one out of the water. Size was my first acknowledgement. I got in the car and I just felt like I commanded the road, so to speak. And then the next thing was when I went to turn off onto a main road and I gunned it, I checked down to make sure I wasn't in chill mode because I'm like, what's happening here? And I wasn't. And it's just, the acceleration of the product line over the years, which is super exciting. It's great. It's what you want to see happen. It's still, it's got some guts to it, but by no means do I compare it to what my dual motor Model 3 has. The first Tesla that I drove was my Model 3. I got used to not having an instrument cluster up front in front of me. And I don't know if I can say that I'm super excited to have this front instrument cluster back. I don't think I'm going to miss it when it's gone either. But I do kind of miss the landscape orientation of the screen. I feel like I was way more productive with the landscape version, but that just could be because that's what I've gotten used to. I will say I like the door handles. I think it's super cool that they pop out. I think that it's very user intuitive. I have a coworker that I work with that walked out to my car with me at the end of the day, and she saw the door handles pop out, and she goes, "Those handles I would understand how to open right away." And she's totally right. It was, it makes a lot of sense. It's like a normal door handle once they pop out. A huge, glaring, obvious piece. This is just a solid ceiling, and I have gotten extremely used to the fact that my Model 3 has an all glass roof. This feels very confining to me, whereas my Model 3, I feel like, despite it being a smaller cabin, I do feel like my headspace is much more open and accommodating. I'm 6'3", so I really recognize things like that pretty clearly. The seats in my Model 3 are much more comfortable. I love the driver's seats in the Model 3. The front seats are great. These seem pretty flat, and they don't feel like they really encompass the body too much. So, it's maybe a personal preference thing, but I do feel like they've gotten a lot better in the comfort of their seating over the years. I've experimented with Autopilot a little bit, and I've had some mixed reviews, and I didn't make an Autopilot 3 versus S video. I probably should have, but again, that's been done a lot too. There have been some places where I feel like the Model 3 fails quite a bit, quite regularly, on my normal drive to and from work, and the S with AP1 hardware handled those situations without hesitation. where I know that my 3 would have done the bounce out, like attempt and abort, attempt and abort. The Model S just took the lane change without issue. However, there's been some high curve access roads or like on ramps or off ramps that the Model S with AP1 hardware aborted a quarter of the way down the ramp, whereas my Model 3 would have easily taken the curve and then merged me into the correct lane at the end of that transaction. This car does not have nav on autopilot, so I wasn't able to really experiment with that. But I do feel like the sensor for it to say like how often you're paying attention or applying pressure to the wheel is much more sensitive than the Model 3 is. And by sensitive, I mean, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily asking you to pay attention more often, but I've been kind of just like experimenting with a little bit, and it gets much more angry at me than my Model 3 does. If I let the hands off the steering wheel after a couple of times of doing that, even though I've corrected it when it asked me to, it's told me that I'm in autopilot timeout. And that's only really happened once to me in my Model 3, and it's happened twice to me now since I've had the Model S today. So I feel like the threshold for it kicking you out of autopilot is much higher on the S. And that might be anecdotal, but it's what I've experienced so far today. I certainly feel that if I had started driving a Model S and moved to a Model 3, my range anxiety would be almost zero. The S60 certainly has a much smaller battery capacity, or at least software limited. And it was obvious this morning when I got in the car and, had 150 miles of range remaining. It's a shock because I'm used to getting in the car and seeing, that 270 number, which is my 80% charge in my Model 3. And not to say that's bad or, good, but at the same time, I got used to it. And so now driving this car today, getting down to, that 10-20% by the end of the day certainly has led me to appreciate, one, the Model 3, and two, not get too worked up about the fact that, I can get down to that 20 to 40% range area and know that I still have a significant amount of driving left. Okay, just picked up my Model 3 from Tesla service. Got a text yesterday that the car was going to be available today. I could pick up anywhere between 9 and 6 p.m., 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. And so I rolled in there just a minute ago. I am pumped to be back in my Model 3. I love the size of this car. I love the power of this car. I know that there are Model S's, the P100Ds that can just smoke this car. But the 60 that I was in, pales in comparison to the power of the Model 3 that I drive, the long-range dual motor. So I'm thrilled to be back in my car. Really excited to have the experience to drive around the Model S for the day. Driving it to the dealership, I was actually a little, it was certainly a shock at the beginning, getting into it and seeing everything that was different and the feel and the size and all that stuff. But even just a day later, I was going to be like, oh, okay, I'm going to kind of miss this car a little bit. But getting back into my car, couldn't be happier. Hope you guys have a great day. Again, share, like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.